Okay, what we're going to do now is we are going to write these if given a graph. Okay, so let's see if we can move this up a little bit. All right, now the trick to doing these, all right, is to recognize a few things. All right, and the first thing to recognize is that these endpoints that you get in any graph always are on the left and the right of your center or midpoint, right? So if you think about this, that you would say, okay, in an ideal world, if you did x, right, x is less than 5, right, and you do absolute value, you have something. What you're going to have is you're going to have 0, and then this is going to go up to 5 here. You're going to have an open circle there, and it's going to go all the way from here to -5, right? And so keeping that in mind, the number that's inside the absolute value sign that is generally speaking either being added or subtracted from the variable is you kind of like your benchmark numbers, sort of like what I talked about. That's the central point of the equation, and that's the central point of the graph. So what I would do here is I would say, okay, this middle point right here, this -4, that's important. I'm going to need that, okay? And now I'm going to figure out kind of like how that works here. All right, so the next thing you need to recognize is that for the most part, whenever you have a less than or an equal statement, that usually means you're going to have an intersection. And when you have a greater than statement, you're usually going to have a union. So the intersection means you're going to have something with two endpoints and it's filled in the middle, right? That's what that means. Sorry, this thing's being really silly right now. And the union means that you're going to have things on the outsides, all right? So you're going to have two almost like separate looking inequalities. So according to this is going to probably be a union, all right? So let's play around with this. And the last thing I want you to think about is I want you to think about a normal situation when you would do something like this. If this were, all right, if this were the absolute value of x is greater than, and we're going to use greater than because we think it's a union, is greater than 2, all right, what we would get is we would get a graph that is at 0 here, and then we'd have 2 here, and we'd have -2 here. We get a graph that we'd have the open circles like this one, and it would go this way. We'd have another open circle here, and it would go this way. Because if we break this apart, right, you'd have x is greater than 2, and then your second case, right, after we do our flipping and everything, would give us x is less than -2. Okay? So those would be the two cases. That's how it would graph. This graph right up here, number 11, is a transformation or a translation of this graph right here. It's basically the same graph, except it's been shifted to the left by a total of 4 units. All right? And so I guess what you would ask yourself is, if you think of this as x minus 0, okay, is greater than 2, all right, you would have to say to yourself, okay, so in order for this to work, if my x is -4, right, what number do I need to put in to get this to be zeroed out? All right, for this equation, for this one right here. And so I would look at that and I would say, okay, well, I know I'm going to have some number in here, right? I'm going to have some number in here. So if you think about it, you would say to yourself, okay, well, if it's minus, and then if I put in the number there, right, you just drop that number kind of in place there, then it kind of takes care of it. So what you're doing is you're always going, it's going to be x minus, and then you put that number that is your central point in right here. It goes right in there. Okay, and I don't know if that made sense, but that's kind of the basic execution of it, like how it works. All right, so if we're writing this statement, right, we are going to go, okay, so that means we're going to have x minus minus 4 is greater than, and it's not greater than or equal to because they're open, it's greater than 2. And then we just simplify it. So it's x plus 4 is greater than 2. And then test it and see if you get it, all right? So if you solve it, right, you would go, well, you're going to have two cases. You're going to have x plus 4 is 2, greater than 2, and then you're going to have x plus 4, the converse of that, is greater than 2, which means you have negative x minus 4. I'm just going to do this side really quick. First of all, negative x is greater than 6. So you have x is less than negative 6 after you multiply both sides by negative 1. Flip your sign. And then this side's pretty simple because you just subtract 4 from both sides. I'm getting ahead of myself there. And you have x is greater than negative 2. So you have x is greater than negative 2 and x is less than negative 6, which is exactly what you have up here. All right, so the two pieces of information to sum this up, all right, and I'm going to erase all this right now just so we can kind of get around here and sort of see what's going on. And I'm going to just recap this for you, and hopefully this will make sense. So the two pieces of information that you want to sum up is you want to figure out, first of all, what's your midpoint. So you got to find your midpoint, all right? So the thing that's between your circles, right? Whether they're filled or not, or open, it doesn't make a difference. Find your midpoint, all right? The next thing you want to figure out is you want to figure out the difference, like between the midpoints and the endpoints, right? So you want to find that difference. So for this one, for 1, your midpoint would be negative 4, right? And then your difference is 2, right? It's a difference of 2. So your difference is always going to be this side of your equation, right? And then the last thing that you have to figure out here, and I'm just going to put number 3 here because I'm a bit of a disaster, is the last thing you have to figure out is it less than or greater than, right? Which one it is. And if you can just remember that the less thans are always intersections and the greater thans are usually unions, all right? So if you can do that, you should be able to get this close enough to a point where you can solve this, right? And then you just put it in this x minus, and fill in the blank form, right? And then put your midpoint in there, right? Put your midpoint in there, and then this is your difference right here, and then you put your absolute value brackets around it. And so that's how we got to x plus 4 absolute value is greater than 2. All right. So I'm going to stop the video here, and then we're going to do one more in another video.